Hey everybody, Aaron Bishop here with another Bishop's Blurb. Yom Teruah, the upcoming holiday at the end of September, it is connected to the idea of God's sovereignty, His kingship, His lordship over all the earth. And this brings to mind in the modern Christian the idea of Jesus as king. Now we hear of this idea throughout the New Testament that Jesus is king, that He has ascended to sit at the right hand of the throne of God. But can we see in the Gospels where Jesus is described as being king? And the answer is yes. There is one gospel above all others that points out the idea of Jesus as sovereign, and that is the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Mark opens with a veiled declaration of Jesus as king, and it closes with a coronation through a sort of shadow triumph that the Roman emperors would go through, as Jesus himself goes through his own triumph to be coronated as king in his crucifixion. Let me show you what I mean. Now, the Gospel of Mark is thought to have been written to a Roman audience. In fact, it's thought that this gospel may have been what planted the Roman church that Paul wrote his letter to before he had the opportunity to visit. And the first verse of the book of Mark is packed full of controversy for a first century Roman audience. Mark 1:1, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That doesn't seem very controversial, does it? But when you understand the culture of the day, then there are two extremely controversial ideas contained in this. First of all is the word gospel, euangelion. This is an idea that I covered in a previous video. You can watch that above. The idea of euangelion is that good news that is being spread is imperial good news. It's not personal, it's something for the empire. It's the birth of a royal son, it's a royal marriage, it's a victory in some far off land. That is the good news. That's the euangelion. It's not that you save $20 on car insurance. The second idea that we also covered in a previous video is the idea of the Son of God. Roman coins of the day contained the image of the emperor and called the Roman emperor the Son of the Divine. Mark is saying, let me tell you the imperial good news of Jesus Christ, the King. And when we read through the book, we encounter this idea over and over in his baptism, in the transfiguration, but especially in the crucifixion. In Mark chapter 15, Jesus is led through the last day of his life. And on this last day, he has led through the stages of a Roman imperial triumph. The procession and the ceremony that an emperor would go through as they were being crowned emperor of Rome. At the beginning of a Roman triumph, especially a coronation triumph, the emperor would meet with the Praetorian Guard because he needed their support to be emperor. At this meeting, the Praetorian Guard would wrap the emperor in a purple robe, and they would place a crown of laurels upon his head while praising him and lauding him as the king and emperor. And we see this recorded in Mark 15 verses 16 through 19. After this, the emperor would then proceed down the Via Sacra, the Holy Way, and a commoner would be pulled out of the crowd to lead a bull that would be given as a sacrifice at the end of the procession. Verse 21 speaks of Simon of Cyrene, who was compelled to carry the cross of Jesus for his own sacrifice. The destination of the triumph was a place called Capitoline Hill, on which a temple to Jupiter had been built. When they excavated the hill for the building of the temple for Jupiter, legend claims that they found an intact human head on the hill. And so the head became known as Head Hill, Capitoline Hill. Well, when Jesus is being led through his procession, the end point, the goal is Golgotha, the place of the skull. We read of this in verse 22. Once at the hill, the emperor would be offered a cup of wine. The emperor would take the wine and then would pour out the wine as a symbol of his service to the people. In verse 23, we read of Jesus refusing the wine and myrrh that they offered him as he got to the hill. At this point, the bull would be sacrificed and the emperor would ascend the stairs of the temple of Jupiter. He would stand on the top steps and with two of his leading officers standing 2 steps below him on either side. Verse 25 through 27, we read of Jesus being lifted up on the cross with the sign above his head declaring him to be the King of the Jews. And on either side were 2 thieves who were crucified next to him. As the emperor would stand on the top step of the temple, the people from below would cry aloud his praises, declaring him emperor, raising cries of acclamation. Well, when Jesus is put on the cross, the people stand below him, calling him king, but instead of acclamation, it's in mockery. During all of this, the people would watch the sky for any sort of sign that would be seen as confirmation by the gods of this new emperor. In some cases, it was a flock of birds, or it was a comet, or it was just a cloud moving in front of the sun at an opportune moment. Well, verse 33 and 38 speak of the entire land being cast into darkness and the veil of the temple being ripped from top to bottom. All of this then culminates with a Roman soldier declaring, surely this man was the Son of God, the King. A Roman soldier recognizing that Jesus was King. The crucifixion of Jesus was intended to be an ultimate shaming of him, something that would blot his name out from the history book so no one would dare to mention it again. And yet, the stages of his crucifixion were a coronation of a king, and Mark recognizes this and he spells it out in his gospel in a subversive way to declare a new king in opposition to the kings of this world. All the crucifixion did was confirm what had been claimed about him all along. He is the Son of David. He is the King of Kings. He is the Messiah. He is the chosen Son of God. And he is the divine God. But his kingdom isn't a kingdom of this world. Instead, it's an upside-down kingdom. It's a kingdom that values the weak, the poor, sinners, and the broken. It's a kingdom that gives life to the dead. It is the kingdom of God, and its king is Jesus, the Messiah.